How you guys doing? We are now live. Welcome to the Bayou Ballers podcast. These are 2 days in a row, back to back. Um, I'm your host, Tay Vigils. That is my co-host over there, man. My guy Trey. How you doing today, brother?
Man, doing good, man. It's like I told you yesterday, man. It was gonna snow out here, and it's been falling, coming down. So it's
Oh,
all good.
okay. Okay. It's been snowing, man.
Yeah,
First, it's crazy around the world right now. All the fires in LA, a lot of houses being burned. That's crazy, man. It looked like a movie out there. So
yeah,
condolences to everybody over there who lost their houses and stuff like that. And
sure.
snow in Texas is wild as well. So, but we're gonna move on with the show, y'all. Even with all the tragedy going on in this world, we are here to talk some Saints football. Well, not football, Saints transactions because ain't no football going on for the Saints
No,
right now, no time soon. But
uh,
we're gonna start here with the coaching search before we
okay.
move on to the draft. So, Dennis Allen fired week 9 against the Panthers.
Yeah, Razzie got 3 weeks or whatever. So something like that.
No, he coached more than 3 weeks.
Or 7 weeks. So
Yeah,
yeah,
he coached a good bit. So yeah, about week 9 against the Panthers, he got fired and Derrick Rizzi took over. Let's before we move on to coaching options, how did you feel Darren Rizzi did with the limited roster he did have? I should say.
um, I will say he at least showed himself to be a player's coach. Probably one of the reasons
Mm-hmm.
why he's been around for such a long time and spoken highly of, not just in the Saints building but league wide. Like I mean, he's someone that the league pays attention to when it comes to rules changes and things like that. But at the same time, I think he also showed why he probably can't be the head guy. That's what
Okay.
somebody that you want to have around, but when it came to certain personnel decisions and playing guys that probably you need to put on the bench are still trying to learn, a hesitancy with the Derek Carr situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think even some in-game decisions were a little off, and I think they just kind of showed. Like one thing that comes to mind is the clock debacle. I think Spencer's first start after Derek, after Derek got injured and Jake's first start didn't go well,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just kind of a debacle in the second half, like against the Packers. Like you can't take that sack, or when Spencer got sacked, you got to call that timeout and not try to have him rush a play in. So it was
Mm-hmm.
just things like that that kind of showed, at least to me, great guy to probably see if we can keep around, but probably not a guy that should necessarily
Be a head coach
have
at
the
the
head
moment.
job. Yeah.
Okay. I I think Darren Rizzi did well. I don't prefer him to be the head coach, as you know. I want to move on from all things Sean Payton. I want to flip the page, and just get into a whole new style of coaching and a whole new culture because the culture is gone when Breeze and Peyton left. I think he did well. I love the emotion he showed on the sideline. Sometimes I think it was overboard with especially with the kicker. Um, I think the kicker missed a field goal or something. I think it was like a 37-yard field goal or something that
Yeah.
he went crazy. But Groupie's been good all year. Like you don't have to. And I'm usually hard on kickers because he had a
Yeah, I think
rough
that was
look.
a punter that he got on.
Oh, hay ball. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
hey
what it
ball. He
was. Hay
like
ball.
think something or something.
Yeah, with the season's already lost, no need to be overdoing it on a punter, man. 130-pound punter. But
Mhm.
nevertheless, I love the team got behind them, especially with that big win. It wasn't a big win, but I think it was in the dome against the Falcons or the
Mhm.
Browns when Peyton Turner hit him and he damn near fell.
Yeah.
This is one of those games. So obviously the players love him, but I just don't think he might be head coach material because he has an interview, but I just don't think he's ready for this team to be the head coach of this team who's
Right.
in like we said yesterday, rebuilding, older players fading out. We don't know what direction is going to go. So like Darren Rizzo as a guy, but I just don't think this is the job for him. Maybe he can go somewhere else who has some winning parts around him. And I should say this. You can't really judge him fairly because he didn't have no weapons.
Fair.
If we're gonna judge Spencer Rattler like he didn't have no weapons, he didn't have nobody, you gotta do the same thing for the coach,
Right.
Rizzi. So
I
you
agree
gotta
with that.
play it fair right there. We can move on to some coaching candidates um of who you would like to see as the coach. And I'm gonna pull up some of the guys that they requested interviews from because I know they requested an interview from somebody in college. I forgot his name though. So I'm gonna pull that up. But who are some candidates you would like to see on their list? But we had some guys come out. I think it was coach from, was it offensive coordinator from the Bills?
Yeah, so I can go. I
Joe
brought him down.
Brady.
We got
Oh, you
Aaron
got him?
Glenn, obviously defensive
Okay.
coordinator for the Lions. We interview him tomorrow.
Okay.
Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator for the Eagles, also
Ooh.
was OC for the Chargers last year, and then
Cliff
the
as well,
Cowboys
right?
for a long time before that. Yeah,
Cliff Kingsbury as well, huh? We
yeah,
interviewed him. Yeah.
that was a more recent one.
You
Cliff
called that a couple months
Kingsbury.
ago.
Yeah,
You called it, and Dennis got fired.
hey, Cliff Kingsbury. That's kind of a shaky subject between local and national media right now. So we gonna have to
Okay.
stay away from that right now.
Heard.
Joe Brady,
Uh-huh.
OC for the Bills, Anthony Weaver, DC for the Dolphins. They actually completed that interview yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Darren Rizzi, like you said, Mike Vrabel, which I don't think we're gonna get a chance to interview him,
Uh-huh.
and Mike Kafka, QB coach for the Giants, actually completed his interview today. Um, and then there's been some murmurs of John Gruden possibly. So
I'll say this, and I have to give a disclaimer to the audience. Baby girl is in the room, so if I pop off, if she get too quiet, y'all, that's why. But
yeah.
I'll say this. Breeze mentioned two guys who he would like to see be the head coach. Do you think you know who they is or who they
Um,
are?
I think he mentioned
It's
Glenn.
no surprise, of course.
I think he mentioned Glenn, and I don't know who the second person he mentioned. Who was
Of
it?
course, in house, Clint Kubiak. He said he would
Did he?
like,
Did he
yeah,
mention?
Glenn and Clint Kubiak. He would like those guys to get a shot. He said about Aaron Glenn, he's a leader of men. He garners a ton of respect. He knows the game. He's highly competitive. And
Mhm.
he also mentioned Clint Kubiak if the Saints were going to go in house. So the Saints were 23rd in points per possession, 18 in yards per possession. Once again, a lot of injuries to the offense.
Mhm.
So you gotta, I don't want to put that in as a thing, but 1 through 4 weapons basically were missing
Mhm.
a good amount of the season. But out of the guys you mentioned, who because Kubiak name hasn't been mentioned in the
No,
search like they did with Dennis Allen
he,
when they moved on. He hasn't
right.
been mentioned. So
He has, and I do at least want to add something for him. He has gotten a request to be interviewed by the Browns and the Seahawks for their office coordinator jobs. Just
okay.
FYI. So that could be something that he potentially takes.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, man, like obviously I was real high on Mike Vrabel, but it just seems like New England is just going to be the place he wants to be. He's the candidate that they want. That's why I said I don't think we're going to get a chance to interview him. That would have been lovely, but I
Go
just
and
don't
put the
see
baby,
it.
put the baby, brother.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Um, I just don't see that happening with Mike Vrabel. Um, other two guys we interviewed already, Anthony Weaver, defensive coordinator for the Dolphins, Mike Kafka, quarterback coach for the Giants. I think if I put you on a monitor right now, I'll put anybody on the live audience on a monitor. Can you tell me anything that you liked about the Miami Dolphins defense? Can you tell me anything you liked about the quarterbacks for the New York Giants? And I'm pretty sure every single person that's on that monitor would say nothing rings a bell. There's nothing that I can say for certain that Anthony Weaver and in that defensive unit that something stood out. I guess in a way that you can say how Aaron Glenn has taken a unit that had 12 people on injured reserve, um, a few players that folks gave up on, kind of back to back, having his safeties lead the league in interceptions. Cornerbacks got a lot of young corners playing well. Like there are things that I can point to the Detroit Lions defense that I like and that Aaron Glenn has shown me as a leader of that unit that I can't quite say I've seen in Anthony Weaver yet. Kind of same thing as Mike Kafka. Haven't, this year is supposed to be a big year for Daniel Jones. That hadn't panned out. Obviously, they end up cutting him. And then you have Drew Lock. I mean, I don't think I've seen anything from Drew Lock this year in the New York Giants uniform that was different from his tenure in Seattle or different from his tenure in Denver. So for me, those guys, you know how every cycle you have maybe a few guys that get interviews that aren't necessarily ready to be actual head coaches, but they're going
Mhm.
through just the process to see what it's like, what they have to be prepared for. That's kind of what I see with the Anthony Weaver and Kafka
Okay.
interviews. So, like with them just kind of being washes, and Vrabel, I think being not coming. I think he's just after he's already met with New England. I think
Mhm.
they're going to do their Ben Johnson interview tomorrow and make their decision over the weekend. It wouldn't surprise me if Monday morning we hear that they've hired Mike Vrabel to be their head coach.
Okay.
Um, I'll tell you, my top three would be
In order.
Aaron. In order, okay, I'm going in order. So in
Mhm.
order, I would want Kellen Moore
Okay.
as my top, Aaron Glenn as my second option, and then, I can go Cliff Kingsbury of the names that have been mentioned, but I would love for us to field the call into Marcus Freeman over at
Mhm.
Notre Dame, like if that is something, or
Okay.
maybe a Liam Cohen from Tampa Bay, 39 years old, has done well at every stop as an offense coordinator, and it's might be a good time for him to be that head coach. So those are some guys that I would like, but definitely confirmed Kellen Moore and Aaron Glenn are maybe my top two.
Mhm.
Kellen Moore for me, I think a young guy, but a guy that has had experience at three different stops,
Mhm.
has played with um, three different or has coached three different quarterbacks, and they've all done well under his tutelage. You could say some of Dak's best years have come when Kellen was the offensive coordinator and how they were able to get, their guys involved from tight ends to multiple wide receivers, obviously utilizing the running backs in the passing game. And that's
Mhm.
one thing he does really well. Um, and so I look at his tenure with Dallas for the most part. Had one season with Justin Herbert last year, and we know Justin Herbert dealt with a lot of injuries, so that was, and then their whole staff got fired when Staley got fired, so that was kind of hard to navigate. But they've done well with, or he's done well with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts has played a little bit better. I think he suffered a little bit in the passing game, but what they've been able to unleash Saquon Barkley, he's going to be a guy that's going to run the ball. That's
Mhm.
something that we're trying to build more and more in New Orleans. And he has history working with quarterbacks.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't mind Kellen Moore for those reasons. And I think he has a really good grasp on relationships in the
Mhm.
NFL and even in the college game. And to be able to bring some good coordinators and position coaches, I'd be excited about the staff that he builds around what we're trying to do. And Aaron Glenn, again, I think, honestly, and it's not fair to him, but uh, uh, a good bit of my pessimism to him being hired was that, in a way, I felt like we as an organization weren't learning our lesson and still trying to stay with the whole Sean Payton thing and folks that were in the building during that time and
Mhm.
trying to find something that only Sean and Drew can bring. But at the same time, what he's been able to do with Detroit, a franchise that has zero expectations, right? And what he's been able to do with that defense and growing, not just because of their star players like Aiden
Mhm.
Hutchinson, but because
Who's
they've
been out
drafted.
most of the year?
Right. They've drafted well and he's developed well, especially guys in that secondary. I mean, the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, like his safeties have led the league in interceptions. Like first you had Chauncey when he was playing there, and then you have Kirby Joseph now leading the league in interceptions. So he
Mhm.
still kind of has that mentality of working with the DBs and having those guys attack the ball, which outside of a Debo wasn't really happening in our secondary. So I can
Mhm.
see some things where he's shown the ability to develop. I think the one question mark really is who's he bringing with him. What's his staff going to look like? Are there going to be some guys from the offensive side of the ball over in Detroit that make
Mhm.
that trip over with him? But I think both would be really good hires. I just more on a Kellen Moore front just because of age, offensive side of the ball, I've seen a history with three different quarterbacks and him doing well.
Mhm.
And whether it's Spencer Rattler or us looking in the draft, I
So
can see him wrong with that guy.
I'm saying that has Kellen Moore ever been a head coach?
He's not. No,
That's shocking. He's had head coach interviews before, though,
he
right?
has. Yep. Yep.
Any reason he didn't take the job or get the job?
I think partially is because he probably wasn't ready. I mean, and some of it is a little bit of ageism as well because he's
Mhm.
relatively young. We got to keep in mind he retired from playing football early and became a coach,
Uh,
so he's a lot younger than
he
some
can't be
folks
that younger than
would
Cliff.
think. He's younger than Cliff.
Yeah, I know he's younger than
Yeah,
Cliff. I say it can't be that younger because Cliff
right.
came when he was 33, I think. I think he
Yeah,
had
something
players.
like
He
that.
had players on
So
the roster who was older than him when he came from college. So, and
yes,
speaking of Cliff, go ahead.
no, but that, and then I think sometimes that cowboy stench is on you too.
Heard.
So I think that's probably why. Like, there were some things he had to learn, and I would say at this point in his career, he's probably ready. I would say
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind us taking a flower on him and giving him his first shot. So.
I'm not mad at that. I would like for the Saints to pursue Cliff Kingsbury. Um,
Okay.
we're gonna leave it with what you said earlier. I know you touched on it, but I just like his offensive mind. He reminds me of a watered down Sean McVay. He doesn't
Okay.
have the wins and the resume of Sean McVay, so that's why I have to say watered down.
Yeah.
For all the Sean McVay fans out there, Sean McVay is a great coach. Cliff, I think he has the yeah. Give it to me.
Yeah. What you think
But
about
yeah.
Joe Brady though? Like, so a lot
Mhm.
of Vegas odds have him as the
Okay.
leading candidate. Be like it's kind of back and forth between him and
Mhm.
Aaron Glenn. Um,
Wait.
I'm interested just to know your thoughts on, well, when you can, I'm interested in knowing your thoughts on Joe Brady because for me, I don't quite see the hype. I just feel like his only success has been when he's had generational talent like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and in the NFL having Josh Allen. Everybody's like, oh, well, he's fixed Josh Allen. Like, no, he's just told Josh, you know what? Instead of throwing as much as we do, we want to
Use
run
your
you a little
legs.
bit more. We're going to
Yes.
run you a little bit more.
We're
And
gonna
is
Cam
that
Newton you.
right? And is that sustainable for Josh Allen's career? I don't think so. So I think with Joe more so than Aaron Glenn, like it's truly the hey, he was a guy that came up in our building and had some history in the state of Louisiana and with the Saints, and we want to give him a shot because resume wise, like it doesn't even match up to some of these other candidates that we're talking about, especially some of the high level ones. When you get to Aaron Glenn, Kellen Moore, Mike Vrabel, even Cliff Kingsbury, and what he was able to do with Kyler Murray, and then now what he's doing with Jaden Daniels. Like Joe just doesn't match up with them. But I'm just curious, in
I,
your opinion, what you think about him and his.
um, I with Joe Brady, he had everything laid out with those
Mm-hmm.
perfect. You talk about the number one and two best receivers in the NFL and top five quarterback in Joe Burrow. So I don't want a coach who's had a loaded. His best results were with the damn near the the two best receivers and a top five quarterback can be a top three quarterback at his best as we see this year, just with a bad defense. So I don't want to lean towards Joe Brady, but I'm not. I wouldn't be mad at it. I wouldn't be, oh man, we got Joe Brady because I just need a breath of fresh air with the Saints right now.
Mm-hmm.
Any breath of fresh air would work. But so I wouldn't be opposed to Joe Brady, but he wouldn't be in my top three choices at all. So I'll say that. But I want to bring it to this. We're talking about coaches. The
Mm-hmm.
coaches that that will get hired, the coach that will get hired will have a say so on the draft, I believe. And
Yeah.
we have the ninth pick in the draft. Right now, currently I'm on saintswire.com. On my phone, I'm not on the computer, y'all, so I can't show y'all. But a mock draft has us going O-line, Calvin Banks Jr. from Texas with the
Mm-hmm.
ninth pick. What do you like O-line at the ninth pick right now?
No, especially I mean Calvin Banks is a tackle, and
Mhm.
I think Fuaga and Penning have
They're fine.
solidified themselves. And Penning still has work to do, but
Yeah, we're
it's
not giving
it's
up
kind of
on them.
night and day from what he was last year, and we've seen the
Yes.
growth, right? And so I think where we are now, we don't necessarily need to look
Mhm.
at the tackle position, and we don't need to do the whole draft a tackle and make him a guard. Like let's
Oh
just
my
stay away
God!
from that,
Please,
right?
let's hope that's left in the Sean Payton and Dennis Allen era.
Right.
Please,
So I just want to stay away from those types of things because I've even
agreed.
seen Will Campbell be a guy whose name is mentioned. He's kind of
I
has
seen
that
that.
offensive
I
tackle,
seen that on the
offensive guard
timeline
look.
with you earlier. I seen his name on the
Hmm.
timeline when somebody shot that name out to you. But
Yeah,
round two, they have Xavier Watts, safety.
that I'm not mad
We
at.
do
I'm
we
mad at.
do need a safety.
We need a
He's
safety
from Notre Dame. Do you like safety at number
as
at
a
our
second
number
round
two,
pick. I don't
second
mind.
round pick?
Because I've seen. I mean, there's a lot of options there. I mean, Barron from Texas, who is the reigning winner right now. Like he's
Mhm,
somebody you can get at that spot too. But yeah, I think safety is a need of ours. I was just
mhm.
talking with someone and saying, he was like, yeah, Tyron Walsh, and I was like, is he really Walsh, or are we again asking someone to play outside of position? And we
We
asked him to
asked him
play
to
a
play
ton of
damn
deep.
near every down,
Yeah, we asked him to play a ton of deep safety
single
where
high.
we really want him near the line of scrimmage and being the playmaker that he's been. And so if you can get a guy like Xavier Watts, Jade Barron, who can play at all levels of the secondary. I mean, if you
Mhm.
want to take a shot at a guy like Malachi Starks, who can play both outside corner positions, can play slot, can play box, can play deep. So I can see that being something that we look into, but who
Uh,
knows?
our safety depth is Tyron Matthews, Will Harris, Jordan Howden, and
JT Gray,
um
that's really it.
super special teamer, and he played some snaps defensively this year.
Mhm.
Um, but it's really thin. And Jordan Howden didn't take that second year leap that we thought he was gonna take. Didn't get a lot of playing time. He got some because of injuries and things like that, but never was really too consistent. Hopefully, he can make the year three jump. But I also want to get to this guy, who I had a bone with in his second year. He was getting a Zach Barnes treatment, Isaiah Foskey. What
Mhm.
is going on with him? A second round pick, didn't play barely at all first year. Special teams. Second year, played a little bit of special teams. Didn't see him. He probably didn't play more than 50 snaps this year.
Yeah.
Um, what is going on with that? Because that was a highly invested pick on the defensive line.
Mhm.
Is this another miss by the Saints on the defensive line?
I think it has the potential to be.
Mhm.
And one thing we know from this staff is that if you don't, I mean, and we can say what we want about DA, but there were certain guys that when they weren't producing, like Kendra Miller, like we're not going to keep you on the field. We're going to move around. And same thing with Nick Saldivari over at offensive guard. Like they were quick to give those guys a quick hook. I would say the thing with Isaiah Foskey is I think he's another example of not being utilized correctly and being allowed to develop. I think the only way he's going to get better, one, is if he plays.
Yes.
But also, I think, hey, maybe he's not a 3-down guy yet, and that's fine. That's why you'll
Yes,
get a
but can
Chase
he be a
Young.
one down guy?
Right.
Can we get
That's
him on the field?
right.
Our pass rush is
Can third
horrific.
and eight, third and seven, third and eight, you just say, hey, your job is to go get the quarterback. Like, can
And
we do things like that?
This what we begged for with Zach Bond. You drafted Isaiah Foskey because he led Notre Dame in sacks. He was a
Yeah.
sack artist. He could bend the corner. He was a fast guy. We know he wasn't a 3-down guy.
Yeah.
It was a reach that you took him that high in the second round.
Mhm.
But come on, we got to get him on the field on some play. We
Right.
have to see what he has at least. When you drafted Peyton Turner, granted that's first round pick.
Yeah.
He plays a lot. Marcus Davenport played a lot. And who's the other first round pick?
I mean, Brazil, you won't count him, but
Oh yeah, yeah, he's a D tackle. But Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey, and Marcus Davenport. And not to even mention our old guy. I forgot the guy with the long hair. He was a second round pick too, huh?
Mhm.
I literally, I forgot it.
I,
Cause something. It started with an H, his first name, and his last name started with a K. You know, I'm talking about number
yeah, I know what you're
44.
talking about.
I think he was a second round pick as well. He
I'm
didn't
just
pan
not
out
going to
either.
try to. I'm not even going to try to enunciate it. So,
All
but, but yeah,
right, man.
man. But to your point, and kind of mentioning, the head coach having to say,
Mhm.
one thing I point out on the timeline today, when you look at some of the head coaching candidates that we have kind of talked to, they kind of have a type of quarterback that they like.
Mhm.
And for one, it ain't the Derek Carr
Dual
type of
threat.
quarterback.
It's a dual threat.
And so, yes, you can use a guy like Spencer Rattler, but we've talked about from a free agency standpoint, maybe taking a shot on a guy like Justin Fields and bringing him in, or from a draft standpoint, a guy like Jalen Milroe that can come in and has that dual threat ability. When you look at some of these guys, now I'm not saying that that's the Saints' vision right now of saying, hey, we want guys, but I think at the very least, they are trying to look for guys that can work with the 2025 prototype quarterback and where the game is going, right? And that's at least pleasing to me. And I think even when you look at defensive guys like Mike Vrabel, he still had a Marcus Mariota and a Ryan Tannehill, and they drafted a Malik Willis and a Will Levis, guys that still had always kind of had that dual threat ability to them. So that was kind of less promising for me as a fan of seeing, okay, not only are they, thinking different with the coaches, but they may also be truly thinking different with the quarterback position and continuing to grow on what they did last offseason, obviously drafting Spencer Rattler. So that's interesting to me. Something I saw.
I know you got to get out of here to make the dinner. I got one last thing for you before we roll out of here. You mentioned Justin Field. That's crazy because I'm looking at this right here on Sport News in a Saints article.com. It says while the Saints they'll be taking over 50 million in dead cap if they release Derek Carr before June 1st. The Saints need to make a decision on a veteran quarterback. If they designate Carr as a post June 1st cut, they'll save 30 million in 2025 opposed to 1 million if they do it prior to that date. But this guy who wrote the article mentioned that Christopher Knox of Bleacher Report made a shocking statement listing the Saints as a top suitor for Russell Wilson this offseason. What you think of that?
I mean, Russell is cheap these days. Now, I will say this. I'm almost like if you want to stick with an older veteran still, that's kind of what you want to do.
Stick with a cheap one.
Derek Carr, but have him duel it out with Spencer Rattler and knowing that, hey, your job ain't for certain. You actually got to compete this year. And that's interesting that they mentioned Russell Wilson, because I was kind of thinking because people have talked about Justin Fields, and I'm like, honestly, I think Pittsburgh is going to try really, really hard to keep Justin Fields. And that could come in the form of, if Russell not playing well in this playoff game against the Ravens, they may pull him, put Justin Fields in, and just ride with it. Because both of them are free agents, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be interesting. I didn't think about Russell Wilson.
Russell cut your eye, huh?
I didn't think about Sierra.
That was a shocking one.
It was a shocking one. I would.
Sierra said she loves New Orleans.
Yeah, if we're going to say, okay, we need a veteran quarterback, but we either want him to compete with Spencer Rattler, or let's say we draft for Jalen Milroe and we want these guys to just sit a year and develop. I think Russell has shown that he can do that. I think even us seeing a different side of Justin Fields, I think to some degree we got to give Russell Wilson a little bit of credit for that in terms of being that leader in the locker room and being that veteran that can kind of show him some things that he sees. Because I think at this point, the struggles of Russell Wilson are more about he's aging and he can't do every single thing that he could do in his youth that a Justin Fields can do. But still kind of being more of a veteran, seeing the fields a certain way that Justin Fields is still learning. So I think he's shown himself to be a good bridge guy, I would argue. So, I'm not opposed to it. That's interesting. I just never gave it thought, but that's interesting that somebody mentioned Russell.
I think Russell's future will determine his playoff run. Many people think he'll lose first round. Well, I think the Steelers will be done against Baltimore. But if he makes a little run, I'm sure the Steelers will try to keep him.
Yeah.
But last thought, is Derek Carr on the Saints next year?
I don't believe he is.
Okay.
I feel like everything these past 7 weeks, if not before, even the drafting of Spencer Rattler and just kind of the hype around him, I think the writing was on the wall a little bit with Derek Carr, especially if things continue to go like they did last season. And we saw outside the first 2 weeks, we started to see some of those same struggles and even same instances of lack of accountability and leadership from him. And he did it again. He was asked about a pay cut, and he said, yeah, I'm not taking a pay cut. I'll restructure, but from what I put on film, I don't need to take a pay cut. And I'm like, have you watched yourself? What film are you watching? Because you are not a $40 million quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
especially not at this point. But
Did,
I feel like it's and I don't want to make it seem like it's the Saints just wanting to get rid of him. I
mm-hmm.
do think it's a one-sided thing. And not a one-sided. I think it's a mutual thing, and that
Mm-hmm.
Derek is just wanting to make sure he gets his money. And that's why he said, "Hey, because he can still restructure and we can still cut him." But I
Mm-hmm.
think he wants to make sure he has his money, so that
Danny.
way when we do cut him, he can go find somewhere else because nobody's going to trade for him. Not with that contract, I don't believe. But honestly, I do not think he's a New Orleans Saint next year.
Okay. Hopefully that is true. Um, and give me your yes or no because we ain't get to touch on the young boy. Did Spencer Rattler do enough for the Saints to move forward with him
I'll
for
put it
at
like
least for next year?
for Trey, if Trey was in charge of the decision making,
Mm-hmm.
I want to see a full offseason with Spencer Rattler getting prepped, building him up, getting weapons around him. That's what Trey would want to do. But when you're 0-5, 0-6 as the starting quarterback, having being unable to put together a full game, you are a fifth round pick, and we're in a situation where we're trying to recruit a new coach to be the leader of our program. With
Exactly.
that in mind, I do not believe enough has been done by Spencer Rattler. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not all his fault. Again, we talked about the injuries. We talked about
And
Nepo Baby.
Kubiak.
We talked about Nepo Baby and how he himself couldn't put together a full game plan. And that's even with Derek Carr at quarterback. I think we were seeing instances where it was struggles for Derek Carr to get things going and our office to get things going, even when we were healthy. And yeah, we can look at the quarterback and the starters and the offensive line, but also we're looking at the offensive coordinator like, what are we doing? And so with that in mind, man, I love Lloyd Slytherin. I think he could really be a good quarterback. I think he has the potential to be our franchise quarterback. But I think we at least got a good enough sample size for an aspiring head coach that wants to come in and say, hey, I might want my guy. And this is an opportunity to do it. Yeah, you might not get the Shador Sanders and the Cam Wards of the world, but again, you have Jalen Miller out there. Drew Aller may change his mind and decide to declare for the draft. Quinn Ewers may decide to declare for the draft. But I don't know. Trey would roll with Spencer Rattler for another year, and let's see what we have. But I just don't. If I'm being honest, I don't personally think he's done enough and on a consistent basis. Not saying that's all his fault, but just enough hasn't been seen by number 18 to say, if I was a new coach, and we know how coaches get hired and fired in this league, for me to say, yeah, I'm sticking with this guy and I'm not going to look in the draft or look in free agency to bring a guy in.
I totally agree. He like I said, we definitely saw some flashes. You saw the throwing ability, you saw the running ability, the dude threat of his game, but it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't enough. It wasn't put together consistently enough. His best consistent effort was first half against Tampa, where you saw him making
Yep.
a lot of plays. They only scored one touchdown, but settled for field goals, but made a lot of good throws. But I don't think it was enough for them to go with number one. But he was playing with fifth and sixth
Yeah.
stringers.
And I'll put it this way, because I remember somebody tweeted out, there was like, Spencer Rattler proved that he should be quarterback one next year. And I was like, he proved that we should move on from Derek Carr. That's about as much as he proved. I felt like
Right.
we saw enough in his game as a rookie to say, hey, if we had to choose between him and the guy that's killing our cap right now, I'm going to go with the rookie. I saw a little bit more upside in what he can be versus who this guy is going to continue to be. But that's about as far as I can say that what he's proven. And to both of our points, he hasn't proven that you just don't look to address the position at all. So,
All right. That's the Bayou Ballers podcast, y'all. We gotta get Trey out of here for you if I get him killed, man. He gotta make that dinner. Gotta get that stove on heating up. But Bayou Ballers podcast, y'all. Back-to-back episodes for y'all. This Saints only one. We know y'all love the Saints content. Baby girl making an appearance. Once again, sorry for her. I gotta deal with her sometimes. Some days, y'all, she'll make an appearance every other week. But who doesn't love a baby? Y'all have a good night, man. Say bye.